So to begin, can each of you please briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about the projects you worked on this summer?
Hi, I'm Alison Dowski. I am a rising junior at the University of California, Berkeley, studying computer science, and this past summer I was a software engineering fellow at Login.gov.
I'm Crystal. I'm a rising senior at Stanford studying psychology, and this summer I was a software fellow on Vote.gov.
Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa. I recently graduated from Wesleyan University where I studied computer science, and this summer I was also an engineering fellow on Vote.gov.
I'm Nick. I'm a rising junior at Stanford studying computer science and political science, and this summer I was a product management fellow at the NIH's National Center for Biotechnology Information.
Great. So Allison, we're going to start with you. A lot of people have probably used Login.gov before and haven't realized it. Could you tell us a little bit more about the platform and some of the government services that are using it?
Yeah, so Login.gov is basically like a single sign-on service for government platforms, and through that, we're trying to make the user experience, I guess, more consistent throughout anything that they need to use like within the government, as well as more secure. And with security comes like two-factor authentication, which you've probably done before for a bunch of other platforms, which is like whenever you log in, you like get a phone number, you like use your phone number and then get like some sort of text or something sent to your phone, and then you enter that on the platform, and then you're authenticated as yourself. So two-factor authentication as well as identity verification, which is needed for some other government platforms, and that's basically just like proving that you're yourself through certain like other means, such as like using your social security number or like your license to verify that you are you. And I guess like as sort of a journey that someone could take through using Login.gov, say like, I want to apply to college, and I need to like fill out the FAFSA so that I can do that. I probably make some sort of like Login.gov account the first time I'm filling out FAFSA, and then like 4 years down the line, I graduate, decide I want a job, so I go on usajobs.gov, and I use my Login.gov account once again to sign on to there and find a job, and then say I have a job at some point and I need to travel for that. I can get global entry by once again using my Login.gov account. And because of something like that, you're no longer remembering like 5 million usernames and passwords, and it's not like hindering your ability to use the services that you need. So yeah, it's a rundown.
Well, lots of interesting things that are happening with Login.gov. Nick, along the same lines, the website for the National Center for Biotechnology Information is often in the top number of government websites out there, and currently is ranked only behind the U.S. Postal Service tracker, which has over 135 million visits. Could you tell us a little bit more about your users and what they're using the site for?
So if everyone would just stop mailing packages, we'd have the most accessed federal website. So the National Center for Biotechnology Information hosts the nation's biomedical database and data infrastructure, and effectively serves as the world's biomedical data infrastructure. So we host PubMed, which has all of these biomedical papers that doctors use around the world. We host a bunch of data, terabytes, we're talking petabytes of data, that researchers use both at the NIH and universities around the United States and around the world. And then we have users like high schoolers who are learning how to use tools like the basic local alignment search tool, and playing around with that in high school, maybe even creating a science fair project out of that. So when we talk about over 100 million users, we have to kind of dive a little deeper and look at the types of users, and we see we have a broad variety of users.
And Vanessa and Crystal, can you talk a little bit about Federalist, the U.S. Web Design Standard System, and how it applies to your site, Vote.gov, and how you reach your users through it?
To talk a bit more first about Vote.gov, it is a tool to help people find out how to register to vote in their state or territory, and it acts as a cohesive, easy-to-navigate website that provides information on registration. And the Vote.gov team works with the Election Assistance Commission to make sure that all of the content on the site is completely accurate and updated whenever needed. And then our site also uses Federalist and the US Web Design System, which many other sites use. So Federalist is a service for static government websites that does a lot of the backend and compliance work, so teams don't have to. And the US Web Design System is used by Vote.gov to make sure that the style for the site matches that of other government websites, so that users can have a more consistent experience of the government online.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, in terms of how this is helping standardize the voting experience for our users, using something like Federalist, for example, I recall after doing some user testing, some of the feedback we received was that Vote.gov, because it doesn't look like your typical government website, a lot of our users questioned its validity, whether it was actually a government website. And so kind of having this seal of approval from Federalist, right, like even though users can't really see that, on our end, we're guaranteeing like something that's secure and reliable. And then again, like Crystal mentioned, the US Web Design System, it's a library of code and tools that is backed up by research and just in general the best design practices, so our team can kind of come in and start ready to put out content without necessarily having to worry about a lot of this like maintenance and compliance work.
So each of you touched on very different purposes of your websites. We have logging into federal services, we have people looking for information about voting, and we have people looking for biomedical data and research. So could you elaborate, perhaps a few of you, on how these different sites were built, since they obviously serve different users and purposes?
Sure. So we use Agile and Scrum, which may be buzzwords to a lot of us. In practice, what that means is we're iterating very quickly. At the end of every week, we have things that could be delivered to the user that would add value. And in the context of a website, that means that at the end of every week, we have a website that could go live. The project that I was specifically working on was in a stage where we didn't exactly know what our launch date would be. And so we had to always kind of be ready and keep working. And as soon as we were told that, oh, we can go live, then we could go live. And so we'd iterate fast, get a lot of feedback quickly, and that allowed us to keep building quickly.
Yeah, Login also uses agile development practices, and I guess I can go into a little bit of like an example of what that would look like. So what we do is every 2 weeks we start a sprint, and what that means is we have a constant like backlog of things that include like features or like bugs or just issues that we need to fix or add. And every start of the sprint, we go through that, add a bunch to the top, and then devs or like engineers or designers will look through that and take on tasks or collaborate on some of those things. And then throughout the sprint, we're like constantly checking in on code that's to be reviewed, and then we're reviewing that. And at the end of the sprint, what kind of happens is we have like a retrospective. So we're all making sure that we're talking about things we can improve upon and things that we can do better for next time, as well as things we did well. So it's kind of just like a constant communication within the team to make sure that the code is like as reviewed as possible and like the best it can be for the final product.
So I think you both touched on really interesting things. It's a feedback loop. It's continuously iterating. I'd love to hear from kind of the other side of things. Why is it important for a user-facing website to be human-centered or people-centered, as Kieran and Eric have called it?
For Vote.gov at least, voter registration in the US is a really complicated system because every state and territory has its own processes and deadlines. So it's really important for the site to try to consolidate all of these different processes in a way that is easy to understand for a wide variety of people. And given that the users are just the American public, which is such a broad population, I think it's really important for Vote.gov to be thoughtful about how to design for many different people.
Yeah, and I know the team did a lot of work on creating personas or these voter archetypes of, who are the people and what are the reasons for either participating or choosing not to participate in this democratic process. And I think along the way, a lot of these people that we think about that are going to be using the site really influence the direction of what the direction of where the site is going. And I think another example of why it's so important to have human-centered design is I know for myself, I've often thought about, what would it mean to kind of gamify the voter registration process? And I think it would be really cool. But is that really going to make people go out and vote more? I don't know, right? I haven't done the research behind it. I haven't done the user testing. But my hope is that eventually, if we do get there, right, it's because we iterated and we did user testing and we kept our users, who are like the people, at the center of what we're building.
For the NCBI, we have a vast variety of skill sets for our users, and so we have to make sure that every product we build can work for people who know how to use the cloud, or people who know how to use a very specific tool, and people who may not know the other part of that picture. So taking a human-centered approach to it means that we're actually putting it in front of users, figuring out why they're trying to use it, and helping to deliver actual value to our users.
So we've talked about building websites, we've talked about building them for users, and we've talked about the people who use the end product. I'd love to hear from all of your perspectives about your summers and what surprised you about working on a federal government website compared to your prior experiences.
I think one major takeaway for me was the amount of trust and responsibility I got from my supervisor. He put a lot of trust in my quote-unquote technical expertise, which was something I definitely didn't experience in my previous technical internships. I felt like I always had someone to look over my shoulder, right, or tell me if I was doing something the wrong way or if there was a more better, efficient way of doing things. And having kind of that trust really encouraged me to put my best work forward and really think, like, for example, learning how to Google better, learning how to trust my sources better, just because I have a group of people, I have a team that's relying on me, and more importantly, a product like Vote.gov, right? I would hate for when I leave to see on the news that all of a sudden it's broken and it's my fault. So it was just something that I hope to take forward with me, and kind of when I have that trust, learning to kind of put in the work and the responsibility that comes with it.
My perspective on impact changed this summer. I spent time doing some startup things in the past where the whole idea is that you're on a small team and you're trying to have a huge outsized impact. But here I was on a big team that had a huge user base already. And so even if I could make a 0.01% improvement to that, we're talking about a huge impact overall. And having that kind of just reaffirmed to me and actually realize that it's like a real thing was a quite valuable experience.
I think for me, is this on? Hello. Okay, anyways. I think for me, what I hadn't really realized before is just how much thought goes into like every single move you make when you're adding features to such a like hugely like impactful website like these. And I guess with that, like something that surprised me is that every single time we thought about adding something like semi-large in terms of features or something that would like affect the user flow, we had conversations about it. And I guess that shouldn't be that surprising, but I don't know. I've never really had an experience where like I've had to think from every single perspective that I like possibly can, or like actually care about like, I know we really want this to be secure for people, but at the same time we want it to be usable, and like where is the balance between that, and like how do we make sure that every single person will still have a like smooth process with this, and what comes with that is like actually discussing everything as a team and doing the research, and I will definitely take that with me wherever I go after this.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all four of you for sharing your perspectives on what it's been like to work on different government websites this summer. I certainly think it's a different experience from any other internship that you might have had in the past, and a really wonderful one with a lot of takeaways. So please join me in giving a round of applause.